Live from Treasure Planet, this is Derailed Trains of Thought. Hello, Tim. We're in a very exotic location this time.
No kidding. I'd really like to know how we afforded our ticket out here.
I kind of just stowed away. I don't know how you got here.
I have a bad tendency to stalk you, so I think that's why I'm asking.
Note to self, carry a frying pan.
Of course, people would have had to see my Facebook picture to understand that, but anywho.
He's just making sure he's not giving me any Twilight vibes, and I'll be sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're back.
Yeah.
To do yet another podcast here out in outer space.
Mm-hmm. And we've gone high tech for the occasion too. We have a brand new microphone. Hopefully you can tell the improvement in audio quality. If not, I'll be rather disappointed.
You'll hear every one of my inabilities to pronounce certain words. So, we don't ever have any really news, or...
We have one news.
We have one news.
One item of news. The Story Project is now available for your Kindle device.
That is true. The Story Project, if you haven't heard us talk about, is we're very fond of. It's a project we did back in 2005 and 6, yes. I believe. It's about these writers who live together and they have to deal with each other, and we wrote it over real time. We were very proud of what came out of it.
Definitely. And that is one of the unusual factors that I often kind of forget to tell people about it. The fact that it was done in real time adds kind of a very rough and tumble quality to it sometimes. But it worked out really well. And like we've said many times before, we're very proud of it.
It'll be the best $1.99 you ever spend.
So it means I'm now actually an author on Amazon, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome.
So
let's go ahead and start with our story school. So this is my idea. I decided that we wanted to talk about action stories. And the reason I wanted to talk about this was I was watching Sherlock Holmes, The Game of Shadows. Have you seen that, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. Afterwards, I really enjoyed it, but I had all these ideas in my head about action movies. And then I read this article that actually just kind of reinforced things I was talking about. But my initial thought was this, and I'm going to call Sherlock Holmes an action movie.
Sure.
Because it's not really Sherlock Holmes in a traditional sense.
Not at all.
But I felt like it kind of encapsulates what some action movies do now, where you have such crazy set pieces that it almost goes too unbelievable to me. In particular, I'm thinking of the train scene, which if you haven't seen it, I won't spoil too much, but it's just crazy. And it comes out of nowhere.
I thought you were going to talk about the running through the forest bit.
Actually, that one too. That's actually maybe higher on my list, but that's one of those where, okay, they have the scene where they're running through the forest away from all these...
A bazillion cannons and guns.
Yeah, high-tech artillery for the time.
Yeah.
Kind of pre-World War I guns.
Mm-hmm.
And they're running, and it's all slow-mo and crazy shots and half-matrixy, and I thought, my brother loved it. I thought it was a little overdone, because, like I was telling my wife, when Sherlock Holmes does his thinking through his fight scene, and it kind of slows it down and does it, makes sense, because it's like him processing it, and it's showing you how he's thinking. But this was just kind of for the wow factor, which I'm not against, but it went on for quite a while.
It was kind of a long sequence, and I did think to myself, there are going to be some people who don't like this bit as much, because it's just so... And the fact that there's all these trees that are being blown to smithereens, splinters all over the place, and somehow Sherlock and Watson seem to be running through this without getting hurt by anything.
And this is to me, the balancing act in an action movie for myself, is that you want your character to do crazy things. You want them to be superhuman. Mm-hmm. But I don't want them to be too superhuman, if that makes sense. I want them to do things that, okay, you can't really do, but you feel like you might be able to do, given the circumstances.
Yeah. Well, and the trick is with modern action movies, part of it is that there's, in a sense, so many of them. Actually, one of my students, when I was teaching a class last semester on mass media, for her project, she looked up like a bunch of the top 10, all time as listed on IMDb. And if you look at that list, a lot of them are these high budget action adventure kind of movies. And so that's what Hollywood likes to make, and there's so many of them now. And the trick with that then becomes, how do you keep audiences excited? How do you always keep it up the game a little bit more when it gets crazier and crazier?
And I agree. I understand wanting to one up the last movie, but at some point you one up so far that I think you lose some of the humanity of why you like an action movie. You know, kind of the quintessential action movie. Okay, maybe not quintessential, but, you know, Die Hard. Like, the first Die Hard, you're just stuck in a building.
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of surviving, and, you know, and that's very simple, but it works because of the what I want to see in an action movie more than anything. I want to see cool fight scenes.
Yeah.
But I also want to see a character who's the underdog pull out a win at the last minute. Because that's largely, and I've said on here before that, like, I love the end of Expendables.
Yeah.
Where, like, things blow up like crazy. But I'm saying that I think, you know, Sherlock Holmes a little over the top. So I might be contradictory, but I think it also is kind of the mood you establish in some ways. I personally think that Mission Impossible was a better action movie than Sherlock Holmes.
I kind of felt too, and it was interesting. Yeah, I enjoyed both movies.
Yes, I did too.
But I did feel Mission Impossible was the stronger one, and perhaps it is because it felt less gimmicky and more, in a sense, more classic Hollywood. In that you were able to see kind of each sequence laid out for it. Wasn't like you were overwhelmed. Okay, maybe like when they were running through the sandstorm. That was kind of crazy. But I mean, you got to each place where they're going to do the caper. They set up, you know, and they lead you through the suspense of what the characters are doing. Are they going to get caught? There's a lot more focus on the suspense of the thing rather than just the adrenaline of it.
Tim, you hit exactly what I wanted to talk about. So where's this? So there's this article I read right after watching Sherlock Holmes. It's from cinemaretro.com. I found it completely randomly. I don't know how I found it. I don't remember now. But it's called Contrast, Counterpoint, and Patience, the Vanishing Penultimate Moment in Film. And largely, it's interviews with, like, Brad Bird, and who did The Incredibles, and the new Mission Impossible movie. The interviews pre-Mission Impossible, but I think it applies. They analyze some Hitchcock. I think they talked to J.J. Abrams. But talking about their definition of the penultimate moment is kind of, or how Brad Bird defines it, it's the sneaking around before the action scene. It's the tension that builds before you get to that action scene. And the article is complaining that there's too many movies that just want to go from high point to high point without spending some time building up to a climax.
Yeah.
And I thought this applied really well to comparing Mission Impossible and Sherlock Holmes. Because Mission Impossible, like when they're in Dubai, which is my favorite extended scene, they have, here's what we're going to do, and then things go wrong, and then they try to fix it, and then, like when he's climbing on the outside of the hotel, they spend time building each little thing, you know, him testing it, and the glove falling off, and they soak each moment.
And that's what makes it all the more intense. I mean, you're watching Tom Cruise, which is actually Tom Cruise on a building, only held up by wires, on this building that's thousands of feet in the air. You've got to be able to soak in that moment. Otherwise, having Tom Cruise in the building you're just wasting that.
But when I kept thinking about it, they soak almost the moments for almost every major action scene. At the beginning, when they open in the jail, you don't even see Tom Cruise for like 5 minutes into the thing. It's this steady build of what's going on there. When they're trying to sneak into the Kremlin, they spend 5 minutes just pushing that thing forward.
Down the hallway.
And
it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they know that half the action is the suspense of whether it's going to work.
Yeah.
And things going wrong. Everything's always going wrong. And all the characters in Mission Impossible, you know, they get hurt. They're like, oh, is this a good idea? You know, they feel human. I think that's helps root for them.
I think it'd be really interesting to compare this Mission Impossible to, say, number 2. Which was directed by John Woo. And I remember not liking that one terribly much.
It's my least favorite, I believe.
I don't remember the details. In fact, that's one of the reasons probably why I don't remember liking it, because I don't really remember much of it. It was just like one, you know, action thing after another. And like at the beginning of that movie, Tom Cruise is climbing this cliff face without like any ropes or anything like that, just with his bare hands. And when you start your movie off with him as such this macho man already, then it's kind of hard to feel real worried about him later on.
I agree. I want to take this kind of milk in the moment back to the train scene in Sherlock Holmes, which they haven't seen. Basically, Watson's on the train, and Sherlock knows that he's going to try to be killed by Moriarty's men.
Yeah.
Basically, Sherlock Holmes shows up, saves them, and then there's like this massive quick flashback about all the things he did to get to that point. So you're doing in a flashback all the setup that we should have seen before. They didn't milk the thing. They showed it as here's an excuse for why this bullet's set up perfectly.
Well, and when in case of Sherlock Holmes, though, I can't feel like part of it is also to say, look how cool it is. This is like how genius he was that he was able to set up all this stuff that you didn't even realize.
Well, I get that, but don't you think if you just saw bits and pieces of that before it happened, and then you saw how it all connected, it'd be even better?
Okay, so sort of like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah, exactly. So we could see the machine being built as opposed to just being shown after the fact that the machine had been built.
Yeah, I can see your point. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, to me, that was the contrast between the two. Now, they're both valid ways of doing things. Right. But after reading this article, I was like, huh. Also, just a little pet peeve, not pet peeve, but interesting about Sherlock Holmes. It's kind of a mystery, but all the clues he picks up, the audience doesn't really get to see. They can't connect the dots. Like, he looks at this botany book, but it's for like half a second. Can't even read the title.
Yeah.
And then one time he looks at a newspaper and you can't even read the headline. You just know it's important. So you can't even pretend to try to put the pieces together.
That's it. Fair. Yeah. That was something, like, after having seen, I actually liked this one more than the first Sherlock Holmes movie.
It was very entertaining. It's fun.
So I would kind of picked up on sometimes when he was looking at something like, oh, that's important. But that's true. You don't really have any idea why it's important.
He's having a little more sense of, when it's supposed to come together, but not having include, like, if you had just little more instances, like the end, but the reveal at the end when he one-ups Moriarty is fabulous. Yeah. But it might have been even better if you had a sense that, not that you should have been able to get it, it's not really a mystery, but whether you had seen more of the pieces. They even had to explain some of the pieces about, like, the pigeon watching and stuff that...
Yeah, I can see, in that case, though, I feel like it's a little harsh to compare it to Mission Impossible, because it's a different kind of story.
That's true, and I guess I'm using it for contrast purposes, because it's trying to do something different.
Yeah, it is. I mean, not every action movie is focused on the caper aspect of going in to set this stuff up and so forth. A lot of times it's just the heroes reacting to what's been thrust at them. Case in point, Die Hard. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And he tries to make these plans, and I guess the other high point of action movies for me is them wiggling out of situations they shouldn't be able to. You always want them to pull out at the last moment something awesome that's believable, and just kind of rub it in the bad guy's face. Yeah. Which also kind of I was really sad at the end of Sherlock Holmes. Okay, so he got Moriarty, but he didn't stop World War I. And the sharpshooter got away. And the sharpshooter getting away was... Yeah, it's realistic then. It's more bittersweet, but... Maybe he'll be in the next Sherlock Holmes movie.
But that's one of those things, that's one of those conventions I love when they just,
where the bad guys totally get what's coming to them.
Exactly. That's one of those conventions that I don't mind people constantly doing.
Yeah. Now, I totally am with you in the sense of letting the audience being able to see what's going on. And this is where the concept of chaos cinema is kind of critiqued by a lot of film critics, film buffs nowadays. The kind of like the Bourne Supremacy, the Bourne Ultimatum, those kind of movies where the camera's shaking all over the place. You can't really tell what's going on. It's just, it's supposed to be really intense because it's cut that way. You showed me an interesting video that was kind of critiquing that. But I see it, it's true, I see it all over the place now, even after Bourne. Prime example, I saw Prince of Persia a few weeks ago. I don't remember if I told you about this.
Briefly did.
I really enjoyed the movie. Kind of cheesy in parts, but still, good stuff. I noticed, though, it was interesting that I liked the way a lot of the acrobatics worked a lot, because he's going off the game. He's
parkour.
Yeah, he's very parkour. He's jumping off rooftops, flipping over stuff, and I thought that all that was really cool. But every time he got into a fight scene, suddenly all the camera shots were really tied in. They're really quick. You couldn't really enjoy the fight choreography because you couldn't see what it was. And that's a real problem, in my opinion.
I agree, because action scenes I won't say always need to be, but I think generally they're better if you have a good sense of space and who's interacting with what, as opposed to just, things are frantic! Yeah. Here's the thing, explosions and franticness, I think for a large number of moviegoers, is enough action. Yeah. But... I want something a little, more, I guess.
And I can understand why you might want to do that and really play up the adrenaline aspect of it. But you can't overdo it. When I want to see a fight scene, I want to see the fight scene. Interestingly enough, I noticed something today on a TV show that you and I both really enjoy. They actually did do this, and when kind of, I would say there may have been a case for it. And this is actually Doctor Who.
Okay, yeah.
And the end of the astronaut two-parter, like after he's revealed his plan to foil the silence.
Oh yeah.
There's this crazy scene where like River is shooting all over the place. They're zapping their alien lightning beams all around. Doctor's kind of waving his sonic screwdriver around. And it's really not clear what's going on exactly. Like, you're not sure why River and the Doctor are able to avoid all the lightning blasts, and how River just is managing to shoot every one of them. It's actually edited quite chaotically, but it kind of works because Doctor Who is kind of more about emotional logic than actually seeing.
Yeah, Doctor Who's very much about making you feel things than having you actually make A to B connection.
Yeah, because half the time you just like, I don't understand how this works, but okay, we'll go with that.
Exactly. You know, like, what was it, the one where Loves killed the Cybermen?
Oh man, I don't even remember.
No, it was one where his roommate, he was the roommate guy again, he was trying to save his son.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Which was awesome.
Yeah.
But very Doctor Who.
Yeah, very Doctor Who. So, I mean, there are cases where I can see you making a case for it.
Well, my case for chaotic is Cloverfield.
Oh, yeah, that's
because
true.
there's such an especially in the theater, was such an insane rush sometimes. I know some people just got sick and they couldn't stand the movie. I can't stand the Bourne movies, but, you know.
Yeah.
I guess it depends how you play it emotionally. But sometimes it feels like it's more about, look, things are happening, as opposed to, look, you know, I'm on the edge of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think War of the Worlds is kind of like that, isn't it? The Spielberg version?
That's true, yeah, it actually kind of is. And, I mean, that was 2005, so that was...
Because Spielberg doesn't normally do that sort of chaotic.
No, not really. I mean, it was very all over the place. Interesting, another very different version of chaos cinema that I saw Spielberg do recently was, and I Facebooked about this, about in The Adventures of Tintin. There was this amazing chase scene, and when I was watching, I was like, I can't believe he's doing this. Because The Adventures of Tintin was all motion capture, very much like Polar Express, except way cooler because it's an action-adventure sort of thing. But there's this one chase scene where the good guys and bad guys are basically fighting over these parchments that have a clue for the treasure that they're trying to get to, of course. But they go through this entire town, and it's simulated as if it's one camera shot. Like, it never cuts. It's not chaos cinema in a sense that you've got lots of these little itty-bitty cuts, but it's chaotic in the sense that the parchments are constantly changing hands. You never know exactly where the camera's going, because it feels like the camera is moving backwards the entire time. So you don't know where in the city they are or where they're going. It's just, because the parchments are changing hands, sometimes characters will pop out of nowhere trying to make a grab for it. It almost feels like an amusement park ride of sorts.
Interesting.
And I kind of wish I had seen it. I don't have to say this, but I sort of wish I had seen it in 3D, because I'm sure that would have added a really interesting aspect to it. But
I don't know if I said it on the podcast yet, but talking about single shots, I still have to say, if you're not seeing, I think it's the first Ong Bak movie.
Actually, I think it's The Protector.
The Protector. Oh, okay, The Protector. Anyways, one of those with Tony Jaa.
Tony Jaa.
Which are horrible plots, but wonderful action movies.
Really.
Well, and that's the thing with action movies. Sometimes, I mean, great ones have good plots, but martial arts movies, you just want to see them beat up stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
But there's this, seriously, it's like a 5-minute uncut action scene. Like, he takes out like 100 people.
Going up this long staircase inside.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But actually, this reminds me, in books, action scenes, I remember talking about writing action scenes with someone in college, and talk about a lot of times, some writers, like beginner writers, get bogged down in details. This is exactly, he punched and I blocked and uppercut,
Yeah.
And even though you're saying all the actions, you lose the sense of action. And it's hard to figure it out, but giving the impression of action, at least that's how I do it, works better than detailing the action, which is almost the opposite of what we're saying for movies in some ways.
Well, it's true, but yeah, writing action is something that I've struggled with at times. It's like, I remember Always Significant, which is that pirate story that we read a writer's group at one time. I probably detailed the choreography too much because, I want people to know that, hey, they're doing really cool fight stuff. When I got to, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth on like the sword duel between Jonathan and Lance in the Story Project. Because sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I think that worked out. Other times I'm like, I don't know. I think I might have been too vague here. So it's a very hard balance.
I think the first time I felt like I did a really good job, well, I don't know the first time, but one I remember was in the Revolution, when the Lich was coming around killing everyone, and like the building was falling, because there's a lot of moving pieces, and if you detail it all, it gets a little...
I remember the fight. I remember the fight between Macalos and Wells being really...
I think that's that same... Yeah, that's that same scene, I think.
Oh, really? I don't remember the Lich being there.
Yeah, I think the Lich was there, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been a long time.
But I was reading a little bit of... Yeah, I'm making a book proposal for of the Squire today.
Which I think your final fight in the Squire is pretty darn cool.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, and that one was interesting because it's kind of technical at spots. So you're trying to keep a lot of things moving. Like, because there's this dragon and the building's falling apart and he's doing some crazy sort of...
Well, I mean, it's unusual because, yeah, you're not fighting just on a 2D field, but because it's a flying dragon, you're fighting on, like, 3D. Your main character has to, like, bounce off of buildings and stuff.
So you're trying to find the best way to write it without getting technical. And I think most of it pulls off pretty well. But it's finding that balance, I think, in writing, find that balance between detailing everything and giving the impression of movement.
Yeah.
Because if you do too much of the spatial stuff, it just gets kind of... You lose the action. I mean, you have action, but it doesn't feel like action.
Yeah. Because it bogs you down with all too much description.
Because an action scene should read fast. I mean, hopefully, or at least efficiently.
Yeah.
So, Tim, any other...
well, one more observation I guess I would throw out, just in terms of action escalating, like we were talking about earlier. My folks watched Cowboys and Aliens for the first time last night. They didn't watch it when I had gone earlier. My mom felt like, and this is, I include this to kind of give a voice to the older generation. Yeah. She felt like it had actually been misnamed because she thought Cowboys and Aliens sounded it was very fun, and she thought it was too serious.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I didn't really take it that serious because honestly, I can't take the concept of a movie about cowboys and aliens that seriously. I don't go home and say, oh, that poor guy lost his wife. I went out and was like, oh, that was awesome. But it was an interesting point. I mean, you think about, like, the action movies of the 50s and 60s and stuff. You just had cowboys and Indians firing guns, and you never saw, like, giant blood spurting out, and it wasn't necessarily, this heartfelt stuff about losing your wife and losing this, like, what's the other female character who lost her entire race or whatever. And you don't have, like, these big giants monsters from Hades that are actually aliens. But I mean, the aliens in the movie are they're derived from the film Alien, kind of franchise. Like Alien, like, Ridley Scott and Sigourney Weaver style of aliens. So I understood where she was coming from, but I understood where the filmmakers were coming from too. So I don't know if that's just a sign of, again, us... Kind of like when we were talking about horror, you always have to kind of up the ante, the throw level. I don't know if action has gotten to a point that it's going to be continually on this upward cycle of violence that we just kind of accept.
And I think there's probably a part of that already has pushed the limits like that. And then there's some like A-Team.
Yeah.
Way over the top. But it's the entire style of the movie. I mean, you feel like they're making a conscious choice to be over the top. And I personally enjoyed that. You could see people saying this is dumb because your tank's not going to do that.
you can't parachute in a tank.
I'm like, yes, you can, because it's awesome.
Because they just did. So, again, I don't know that we necessarily have an answer, but there's a lot of interesting questions to see where action and adventure kinds of stories will go in the future.
Yeah, and find the balance between doing something new and cool without breaking the limit of the story.
Yeah.
I guess. All right.
That's what we got.
So I guess up is soundtrack. Alright, so I'm going to do our first soundtrack today. I was trying to pick an action-y sort of video game. So I went with Contra, because Contra is insane. Very enjoyable, and of course, why we all know up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start. But I decided to go with a kind of different sound. Most of the Contra ones on Overclock Remix are guitar. Rock.
Rock, yeah.
And there's not actually that many remixes for Contra, all things considered, but there's some heavy rock ones. But I decided to go with this one called Dystopian Future, remixed by Danny Shock. It's a remix of Contra 3, actually. And it's very jazzy. And it puts me in the mood of Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop has great action scenes, and they're all done to jazz. And
Pretty awesome.
pretty awesome. And I like the juxtaposition, doing the. I mean, that's a way to up the ante in some ways. To just put it into a different style
That's
than
true.
you're used to doing. Because there is a very dancey sort of thing going on.
I would love to see more. It'd be really cool to see a whole. Sometimes you see. I feel like I've seen some action scenes done to classical music,
Yeah,
which is another. That almost has a feeling of.
epic. You got kind of this. Are you thinking like the opera classical?
Well, yeah. I'm
I mean,
trying to think of an example.
Are you talking like
doesn't Evangelion do a whole sequence to Ode to Joy?
Yeah, that's true. Evangelion loves to do, and anime in general actually plays with music quite a bit more than American movies.
And in that sense, it becomes sort of an ironic thing in that you've got something very beautiful said to something that's very gritty and sometimes grim.
Yeah, and usually it's to add some sort of underpinning of philosophy, or because Ode to Joy is all about the brotherhood of mankind and stuff like that.
But having the jazzy stuff always makes for a fun sequence.
Yeah, and you see it occasionally in action movies, not often enough.
Not often enough.
So here it is, Dystopian Future remixed by Danny Shock. Alright, welcome back. Hopefully you really enjoyed that. You got down. I guess now we're going to revisit a section we've only done once. Which is called What If? What if you have not listened to our other one, we just asked a question. Try to put two things juxtaposed together. Last time we did what if J.R. Tolkien had done Star Wars.
Yep.
And actually came out they were actually not too far off.
No, not actually, surprisingly.
So today we decide to, in honor of action movies, is to say, what if Michael Bay had directed Wizard of Oz?
So certainly any time that the witch vanishes, rather it being a puff of like pink smoke, it would obviously be a giant explosion. Giant fireball.
Well, and probably it wouldn't be so much in Kansas as in some slum in some city.
Oh yeah, that's probably true.
And Dorothy would probably be a little more
skimpily dressed.
Yeah, what shall we say?
To put this tastefully.
And what? Rap instead of Somewhere Over the Rainbow?
No, yeah, probably. That, or would there actually be singing, or would it just be no? Well, if there was singing, that's only because Dorothy was like a stripper.
Oh, I completely see that. And she's trying to escape.
Yeah, she's trying to get out of her lifestyle.
Yeah. And so, so all the people in Oz are like
her manager, or her best friend. Yeah. Well, what about Toto then? Is it an actual dog, or is it like?
I think it's got to be some sort of transformer.
That might be a little much.
No, but I could see it be some sort of just bizarre. How
about a python?
So, Python. We're going with Python.
Direct from Snakeogram.
Snakes, which dropped us.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
We gotta find another sponsor. My wife kind of complained because they sent us some, as a sponsor, some free shipments, and anyways,
wasn't too happy with it. I hear Lenovo wasn't too happy about it either. Your dog?
No, it was bad. Okay. So Tim's looking into a new sponsor that might be a little less snaky.
So hopefully, but
yeah. So I think we have this here.
So now what about the Munchkins?
The Munchkin. Here, the thing is, Oz would be a lot more tripped out. Well, it wouldn't be tripped out. That'd be more like Tim Burton. Yeah, Tim Burton.
Which would be scary too, actually.
But they would have to be computer generated in some fashion.
I'm thinking it'd be more of like a Blade Runner sort of atmosphere. Like, it'd be like sort of like New York, except a lot more bright, much more bizarre, much
kind of. Well, do you ever watch the Tin Man on Sci-Fi?
No, I never saw it.
Oh, it has kind of a little more of that sort of, not quite that feel, but heading that way, because like the Wizard of Oz is like this druggy and stuff like that. But yeah, I could kind of see. Have you ever seen The Wiz?
No, I've heard of that though.
Okay, that's also kind of interesting. Very kind of urban version of Wizard of Oz.
Well, the Cowardly Lion probably wouldn't actually be cowardly. He would probably be pretty vicious. Like, Dorothy would have to fight him off with like her bare hands and subdue it.
No, see, I think the Cowardly Lion should be cowardly, but you would have all these like. He'd be like one of those annoying side characters that would have all these quips and like whining voice, and he'd be all nerdy, and like really overplay the stereotype.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. He'd be like a computer programmer then.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like, he'd be like, "Oh, game over, man."
Yeah, I think that would be much more the style.
Yeah. Okay.
Tin Man would have to be like some hardcore Marine. Because here, if nothing else, Michael Bay, the law enforcement, the military, he does a pretty good job with having, So he would have to be. Tin Man would be this military guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about Scarecrow?
Scarecrow, I'm not sure on Scarecrow yet.
Probably a hippie, I would say.
Love interest.
Oh, that could be a love interest.
But I don't know how you pull that off.
I don't know either. I can't imagine Michael Bay having a guy that was actually made of straw.
No. That's the Tin Man would have to be love interest because he's got to get his heart.
Oh, that's true.
And he's the Marine.
Oh, okay, that's right. You're right. Tin Man would have to be love interest.
Okay.
So Scarecrow, I'm not sure what to do with this guy. Maybe he's the druggie.
He could be the druggie. Yeah, we could see, or
maybe instead of being a straw, it's just like he's always smoking weed. No.
So he's kind of like this idiot savant. Like his brain's like completely messed up. But every once in a while, just say something really awesome that makes sense.
Yeah, and then people will look at him weird. Like, how'd you figure that out?
Yeah, I think that's certainly Jerry Bruckheimer would be all over this idea.
All right, now what about the witches?
I know. No, Jerry Bruckheimer doesn't work with Michael Bay, does he?
Not really.
Okay, they're just similar.
But kind of similar. They do blockbusters.
That's what. Yeah, for some reason thing they had. Okay, ignore that then. So Munchkins, we don't know. I feel like they should be pale people with some sort of weird twitch.
That or they're like the citizens of a third world country. Kind of like.
Oh yeah, that would make
Temple of Doom sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true. That would be.
And they're vertically challenged.
But we need more action scenes.
This is true.
Well, the whole tornado scene would be fabulous.
Oh,
because you'd have to have like fire jets accidentally in there, and like the house is being destroyed. She's jumping from her house to something else.
Her house is being torn apart bit by bit, and so by the end, she's like clinging on to a giant frisbee. A giant. I don't know why giant frisbee came out.
Like a door to a car.
Yeah, car door. There you go.
Yeah, I think that would be yes. So some sort of tornado-ish sort of thing. Or, or, I mean, it could be like the end of the world for all we know.
Well, and anytime the Wicked Witch shows up, she'd be hurling fireballs at them, and they'd have to be return fire somehow.
Yeah.
So probably
we got the Marine with a gun, and I think...
That's true. And Glinda would probably, rather than just give her ruby slippers, she would probably give her, like...
some sort of...
like a AK-47 or something.
That'd be... Okay, come on. So you got stripper Dorothy with the AK-47... with a druggie, this like computer nerd, and a Marine.
Yeah.
That is completely a movie that would be made.
Yeah. Totally.
And then the flying monkeys.
The flying monkeys, they would be vicious.
They'd be like feral.
Yeah. They'd be like old zombie monkeys.
Zombie monkeys, yeah.
Flying zombie
cyborg monkeys. Flying cyborg monkeys.
Yep.
Something like that. And they have this crazy like speech, kind of like that disc from that little tiny transformer that does so they have to talk like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, what about Emerald City? I'm not sure what else to do with that one.
Yeah,
I'd say, well, for one thing, it's probably guarded by a transformer.
Of a different color.
Yeah, exactly. And Oz himself, that would be, man, it'd be hard to outdo the giant head, but
yeah,
Michael Bay could do it.
But it would have to be not like a floating head. It'd be like an actual severed giant head.
Okay. Yeah. That varied its color. It'd go from like green to purple to... It would shoot like laser beams out of its eyes.
Yeah,
I think.
Very, Cave of Wonder sort of thing. Or Max Headroom Evil or something like that.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So what's the climax?
Climax.
So
see, the water's not going to work.
The what?
The water.
Oh yeah, no. Well, obviously they have to storm the castle. That's part of it.
Like
they mass the armies of the Emerald City to.
No. The Munchkins have to come.
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go.
All the third world citizens.
Yeah, and then they're like beating up on the cyborg zombie flying monkeys.
What are the people called? The soldiers.
Oh, the soldier. I don't know.
The brown. No, the.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and they would have this tribal like version of that.
Yeah,
kind of like Matrix, when they're in, where they have the mosh pit in wherever they live.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I just forgot the name of it, though.
Is that Zion?
Zion, yeah, that's it.
Horrible. Horrible Zion. So yeah, they have all these, kind of, maybe even like Area 50, or, District 9 sort of.
Now, did Dorothy still get captured? Are they going to rescue her? It seems like they would have to.
Dorothy has to get captured.
And she's like, what's the term for it? She's like tied spread eagle on this giant thing, and the witch is like about to sacrifice her.
Now here's the thing. Here's the thing. Is Dorothy the main character? I mean, she starts out the main character, but when she hits Oz, is she the main character, or is Mr. Marine Guy the main character?
Well, I think it's probably a kind of about their relationship.
Yeah, I would have to be. Yeah,
and the other ones are kind of.
She's the first one. He's the first one she meets. I think we have to switch the order.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. So he's gonna go get her back no matter what, and so he's organizing.
And he convinces the computer nerd and the and the druggie.
Which the computer nerd would have to like hack into the systems in order to shut down the witch's security and stuff.
And he's very Jeff Goldblum in Independence Day.
Oh,
when he's like typing and like,
yeah. I will not do a visual demonstration of that.
Okay, and then we need to have some sort of very violent ending for the witch.
Well, let's see.
I guess it could be.
I think what should happen is at some point the Marine, they rescue Dorothy from whatever she's at, but then they get separated from her, and the witch and Dorothy are like isolated alone on top of the tallest tower, and it's just a fight between the two of them.
So cat fight.
Yeah, cat fight. Basically.
Okay. Yeah. And L. Frank Baum is rolling in his grave right now.
Actually, you could use the water if, like, the witch equipped her with, like, a giant super soaker, maybe.
Or maybe water could be some sort of, some precious element in this world. Or
maybe, maybe it's the water that short circuits the witch's force field that protects her.
Oh, we could do that.
Yeah, that might work.
We need a catchphrase, too. When the witch dies, she's like, da-da-da. But I don't know. You're soaked. Okay, that might not go well on the poster.
That's really ridiculous.
You're not in Kansas anymore. I guess we should have Kansas be like the name of her, like, I don't know, strip club.
Kansas.
Okay, they'll pour out.
Well, maybe that's her stripper name. You know, it's Dorothy Kansas.
No, don't even go there.
Okay,
because too many bad jokes come off that now.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
All
right. So that's Michael Bay doing Wizard of Oz. Wow.
Yeah, I think
that way would.
We may be our own worst enemies, Nick.
You know, the problem is, Tim, someone's going to listen to this and think, that is awesome. I'm going to write that script. And then someday I'm going to be flipping through Sci-Fi Network.
And you'd be like, what is this? No.
Wow. Interesting.
So, I don't think we're going to be able to top that.
No,
well, except, wait a minute. How does Dorothy get home?
Does she even go home?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Because why would
why
she
go
want
home?
to?
I mean, yeah.
There's no place like not home.
Unless, of course, see the golden brick road, whether it's actual gold, and she comes home with like bazillions of dollars and like one ups everyone that she like used to.
That used to put her down.
Yeah, I think that's going to have to be.
Yeah, that's probably true. They give her.
So you have the scene at the end when you're like, wow, you know.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, you know, in the last scene, just her standing there with her money bag in one hand and her AK-47 the other. with the Marine at her, you know, at her side.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's our assignment for you listeners. Not to make this, but if you can come up with a catchphrase.
We need a catchphrase.
Yeah.
Yes. Please keep it clean. Wow. I don't think we've ever discussed a movie which would be starring a stripper, Tim.
No, we never have.
Thank you, Michael Bay.
Yeah, thank you, Michael Bay.
All right. Well, I might go wash my mouth out. Okay. So, Tim, contact info.
Yes, please send all of your death threats, all of your letters of outrage to derailedtrains@gmail.com.
You can always visit us and leave your death threats at derailedtrainsofthought.blogspot.com. It is very lonely on our website right now.
It is. We have not heard from anyone. Are you still out there? Hello? I guess it's time to bow out. This is running a little short, or shorter, but maybe that's okay.
Where it lacks in length, it makes up in quality.
Yes, in the least absurdness. So, my soundtrack today, well, whereas Nick went with the more unorthodox jazz music, I kind of went with my first instinct here, because I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. So this is from Punch-Out!, the classic NES, as I should say it's remixed from Punch-Out!, the classic NES game. And it's called Little Mac's Confession. This is one of the few OC remix. I guess there's more, but it's not in the majority of songs on there that have lyrics. But this is some pretty awesome heavy metal.
It's a pretty great song.
Yeah, you should enjoy it. And I think Michael Bay would like it a lot too, actually.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It kind of makes you want to punch someone, so...
All right. Well, I hear some peg leg coming closer, so we better get.
Yeah, just make sure you scoop up a handful of this gold before we leave. Because I have a feeling this whole place, you know, once the pirates get here, this place may just explode. You know how these things go.
Yeah, we go the way of the finale of every Lost season.
Yep, pretty much. So. All right. Thank you for listening, and this is Tim.
This is Nick,
and we'll see you next time.
You're soaked.
Norris. Chuck Norris, man of action. Chuck Norris stars in Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. Chuck Norris, he's got nerves of steel and strength to match.
It's too dangerous, Chuck. Wow.
Too much.
Too much.
Kimo, the samurai warrior. Reed, Chuck's teenage apprentice. Tabe, a sumo champion. With Chuck Norris, they battle the sinister forces of the Claw.
Remember this.
And the ruthless Super Ninja.
I'll finish Norris!
Chuck Norris stars in Chuck Norris Karate Commando.